we're going to talk about something very important. And I feel like every week we talk about something important. And my team, they give me suggested topics, and we want to make a podcast that is impactful, that people listen to it every day, will get something, will make a difference for them. And I think the topic that my team picked this week is really, really important. And it certainly hit home to me because it's something that I've dealt with over the course of my life and over the course of my work life. And that is recovering from severe burnout and exhaustion. I'm someone who has struggled with severe burnout and exhaustion throughout my working career. When I was in my therapy practice, when I went and opened my therapy practice, I was so worried about not succeeding that I worked really, really hard to build a client attracting machine of a therapy practice. And over the years, I got this really, really big practice, and I got to know Adam Frower, who I talk about often on this podcast, and he had much more, and still has, much more of a balanced life than I do. And he would talk to me about me seeing 10 clients a day, 6 days a week, and he would say, "You're not going to be able to do that forever." And I loved the work that I was doing, and I was like, of course I'm going to be able to do it forever. I love the work that I'm doing. And he would say, there's no way you're going to be able to do it forever. And then I have another friend named Bill O'Hanlon, and he said the same thing. There's no way you're going to be able to do this forever. And I was like, but I love it. What are you guys talking about? And I was making a big mistake. They ended up being right, and I'm going to talk about that here today. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie. And I remember, they used to, I don't want to say, bug me about it, but, out of care, they would be like, this is a lot of work you're putting on your shoulders. This is a lot that you're putting into this. This is a lot that you're doing. Are you sure this is healthy? Are you sure you're going to be able to manage this? And one day, it literally was like a day. I woke up kind of 9 years into this therapy practice. It was the first day this entire time I didn't want to go to work. I remember waking up on this one particular day, and I was like, I don't want to do this today. And it had nothing to do with my clients. It wasn't I'm resentful because of my clients. It was I've just given everything I have to this one thing and this one initiative. And it was I need to do something else. And I remember calling Adam and telling him, bro, I think you're right. I think I'm kind of spent. And there were a couple of mistakes that I was making that I want to point out, because this is how you notice when you're getting burnout and you're getting exhausted. The first mistake I was making was I assumed that burnout and likability of your job weren't congruent. So I thought, well, if I love my job, how could I be burnt out? And that ended up being wrong. You can absolutely be burnt out from roles that you enjoy. I loved my role as a psychotherapist, and by the way, still do. It's something I hold near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I cherish. But there is still opportunity for me to be exhausted from doing that work, even if I love it. I love showing up for my best friends and family, but there's still opportunity to be burnt out, even if I love it. We think that, oh my God, if I love my partner, if I love my kids, or if I love my job, I won't get burnt out from doing the job, and that's not correct. The other thing that I wasn't paying enough attention to is how important appropriate downtime is. And when I say appropriate downtime, I mean some people, they spend their downtime reading, and other people spend their downtime playing video games, and other people spend their downtime walking, and other people spend their downtime going out and having fun with friends, going to bars, happy hours, restaurants. You have to know what's your way of spending your downtime and making sure you build that into your schedule routinely. And anything that is getting in the way of you doing that, you must have a way of blocking and removing it without any guilt, without any shame, without any embarrassment. And no, it's perfectly okay for me to hey, you know what? I'm not going to go to that party. I've had a really long week. I did a lot of work this week. I had a lot of things going on with my kids, family, whatever. So I'm going to stay home and play video games. I'm going to stay home and read, or I'm going to do this other thing. I made those big, massive mistakes and paid a consequence for it, because one day I just woke up and I was at the end of my rope. Well, I've made significant changes in my life since then, which we're going to go into as we go through this week. But right now, I just want you guys to know, like, don't make those two mistakes. Don't think just because you love your job or love your kids or love your family that it won't lead to burnout and exhaustion. And also completely understand that you need to attend to yourself. You need to have fun. You need to have things that appropriately make you feel good and build those into your week. So yesterday, I talked about like how I noticed I was experiencing burnout. Well, maybe I didn't go super deep, but I talked about my own personal experience with being burnt out and exhausted. And maybe right here, I'll let you know like some of the ways that I noticed that I was burnt out. Because yesterday I told you about like the day I was like, I am at my end and I got to do something different. But I didn't really talk about like what was leading up to it. And in leading up to that, I was really tired. And I would come home, and in months and years prior, like I would come home from work and I would play video games and I didn't need a lot of sleep and I would talk to my friends on the phone and, I would do that. I would be my normal kind of engaging self. But as time went on, I noticed that I was requiring more sleep, and I noticed that my like energy was depleting. I wasn't working out really well. I wasn't eating really well. Wasn't taking care of myself in an appropriate way. It was just like, as time went on, there were these signs, but I didn't notice them because, like I said yesterday, I thought I wouldn't experience burnout or exhaustion because I love my work. And I didn't notice those little signs, maybe even big signs, leading up to it. I just thought, I'm tired because I need more sleep, or I'm getting older, so I need more sleep. But the truth is, I was really struggling, and these were like warning signs on what was coming. And then once it hit, when I realized like I can't really do this anymore, I had to make some really hard choices and start making some changes. And today I'm going to talk about exactly what those changes were and point out how if you're struggling with burnout, if you're struggling with exhaustion, how you need to make changes too. I'll give me as an example, and then I'll translate it a little bit on how it can be applicable to other people. My role as a psychotherapist was like my identity. But what you have to understand is as you age and grow and evolve, you have to be willing for your identities, the way you show up and identify yourself, will also evolve with you. So while I once identified as a psychotherapist and I did that role and I fulfilled that role to the best that I could for a decade, when I got to this exhaustion point, I had to ask myself, how do I want to show up now in this new season? This identity of psychotherapist is really challenging me. How do I want to show up now? And I talked to close people. I talked to my good buddy Adam. I talked to my good buddy Bill, who I mentioned yesterday. I really had to think about like, how do I want to be identified as I move forward in this moment and in this space? Like that was really important to me. And I realized I wanted to do something different. And the thing I started doing, well, there were two things really professionally I started doing. Is number one, I started like putting more of my energy into my professional speaker career. That was the first thing that I did. And then the second thing is I started putting more of my energy into this online training business that at that time was kind of small. And I started thinking like, what if I put more energy into this? What could it become? And the reason I was doing those things is because they felt like they would bring me more passion, and they felt like they would bring me more freedom. They felt like they would bring me closer to the ability to go where I wanted to go, do what I wanted to do, and hang out with who I wanted to hang out with. If I'm being very honest, the thing that was causing most of my burnout and exhaustion, it was that I felt as long as I'm seeing clients, I'm stuck in my office seeing clients. At that time, we weren't really doing online therapy like we are post-COVID. So at that time, like if I had, 45 clients scheduled in a week, I had to be in my office that whole time. I couldn't take a trip on the weekend to see my buddies. I couldn't go out to the Dallas Maverick game. I live in the Dallas area, so I couldn't go to the sports game. I couldn't do those things. And I wanted to build a life of my dream. I wanted to build a life where I could do those things. It was not about money. It was about freedom. And it was about how I identify myself and how I show up at myself. So the question I think people have to ask themselves is, who do I want to be? Like, that's the question I think we need to pose to ourselves. Who do I want to be? And what changes do I need to make in my life to get there? The first and immediate change I had to make was I had to stop seeing as many clients, which meant I no longer needed a brick and mortar office in the same way. So I had to get out of that office, which required me doing some things. I was on a lease. I had to figure out a way to get out of the lease legally. So you have to ask yourself, who do I want to be? And what are the roadblocks and barriers between me and becoming that thing? And once you start identifying those things, then you start transforming your life in a massive, massive way. So ask yourself those two questions. Who do I want to be? And how do I get there? I mean, there's no doubt that burnout can be tricky, and the things that lead to burnout are hard. And I've talked earlier this week about my own experience with burnout from having a very large psychotherapy practice and how that impacted me and my health and the signs of that. But burnout happens. It happens because we give so much of ourselves, and we give so much of our everything we got to the work that we do, or the project that you're working on whatever the thing is. And it makes burnout unavoidable for some of us. And I just think everybody's going to experience it at some point when you're working on something meaningful and when you're working on something significant. It doesn't mean that you don't love what you're doing. It doesn't mean you don't love who you're doing it for. It doesn't mean that you don't want to get through it. But it is important that we acknowledge that burnout is just a part of the process, part of the world, part of what we go through, part of what we deal with. And I want to share a little bit about a different time where I experienced burnout in my career and in my life really, and how I got through it, because we got to get through it sometimes. Sometimes the only way through something is through something. I don't think we should avoid it all the time, but sometimes you just got to go through it. And I think really the first time in my whole life I experienced burnout was when I was in undergrad. Actually, it's my last year of school. Undergrad was some of the best times of my life. I made some of the best friends at that time, and there wasn't as much stress and pressure and things I had to get done, and less adulting, if you will, if I can use that made up word, adulting. There was less of that in that season of my life, in that time of my life. It was just easier. But then the last year of college came, and last year of college was difficult. I had to really buckle down, and I had to get through that, and I didn't have any money. I had to get a job. So that particular year, I had a full-time course load at college, which was about 15 credit hours, those of you familiar with college. And in order to pay the bills, I had a weekend job. And my weekend job was I worked 18 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday. So 18 hours a day, man, those were some super long days. I went to work at 7 a.m. and I didn't get off until 11 p.m. And then I would go home, go to sleep, and then do it again every weekend, no matter what. And my job was a very hard job. I was the caregiver, not the caregiver. I was like a care worker for people with traumatic brain injuries. And it was an incredibly hard job, and it was incredibly taxing. And to describe me as burnout at that season of my life was unbelievable. I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit the job. I wanted to quit the schooling. I wanted to stop really badly. I wanted it all to end. So why did I keep going? Because more than wanting to quit or stop, I wanted to get to the end. I had this belief that if I can get through this, my life will change. If I can get through this, then something in my life will change. I didn't know that I was going to become a psychotherapist, or I didn't know I was going to be doing what I'm doing now. But I knew, if I don't graduate, then everything stays the same. I knew that if I don't finish, then nothing will be different. And I really wanted something to be different. I wanted to live the kind of life where I put in the work and I put in the effort and something became different. And if I quit the job, I wouldn't be able to afford to pay for school. And if I quit school, then there was no point in having the job. So it's I got to get through it. And I think that's the key and why I wanted to share this today, because sometimes you just have to go through it. Sometimes it just takes work, effort, grit, determination, stubbornness, and strength. And you have to focus on once I get through this, then my life will look the same, will never look the same. Once I get through this, then everything in my life will be different, and all of this and the hard stuff that I'm doing to get through this will be worth it. Try not to focus on the burnout, and try to focus on the outcome that you're seeking. Sometimes the cause or trigger to burnout is really clear and really direct. You're working overtime, you spending lots of time at work, not spend enough time around families, whatever. Like sometimes it's just really clear and really direct. And other times it's a little bit more cloudy, a little bit more, indirect, a little bit more complicated. And sometimes it's circumstantial, right? Sometimes it's like a very, the environment is causing it. Like I remember I got a good friend who was a university professor. This was actually the thing that stopped me from becoming or pursuing a university professor job. My buddy was a professor at a university and he loved his job. He loved working with the students. Like he just loved it. And then one day his boss, the dean of the program, retired. That was it. He was gone. And my buddy loved him. And I remember him saying like, man, I really hope they hire someone nice that I like. And I was like, yeah, man, I hope so too. Like, and unfortunately they didn't. They hired someone that my buddy experienced as a challenge. And he went from loving his job to hating his job almost overnight and ended up having to leave that university and go find another university job. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to out him as not liking his boss and whatever, but that was the challenge for him. So what do you do in situations where like the burnout you're experiencing is kind of environmental or circumstantial and causes you to need to change your lifestyle or change your environment? That's what we're going to talk about here today. You got to make a change, right? You've got to make a change. And I'll tell you a quick story to remind you of like how important this is. But like many people in the world, COVID drained me. And I think I had a bit of burnout with COVID. I was, if you guys remember all those years ago when we had the COVID-19 shutdown, I wasn't traveling anymore and I was in my house all day. I wasn't really doing anything or going anywhere. And it was challenging to say the least. Like it was really, really hard. So I remember I got to November shortly after my birthday and I was really challenged. I was really, really like, God, I'm sick of being in the house. What am I going to do? And I went to a friend's house, a friend named Rachel, and she was talking about archery. She was talking to one of her employees about shooting a bow. And I was like, man, I've always wanted a bow when I was a kid, but I don't have one. I didn't really think too much of it. And after a while, I thought, man, maybe I'll try and go get a bow. And I went to Bass Pro Shop. I had, again, like really hadn't been out of the house a whole lot in that time. And I go to Bass Pro Shop, got a bow. I asked the person at the shop like about compound bows, and I learned a lot about compound bows, a lot of things I did not know about compound bows in that conversation. So I bought one, bought some arrows, bought a target, and I went home and I started shooting, and like the burnout went away. And I can't even describe it. It just felt like all I was doing. I went from like being everywhere all the time in a different country, state, city, just being everywhere all the time, to all of a sudden I'm stuck at home and I'm just sitting in the computer all day. But now I have this toy. I mean, it's not a toy, it's a very serious weapon, so don't think of it as a toy. But all of a sudden I had this thing that I can go in my backyard and play around with. I go to my backyard and shoot. And burnout went away. And I was like, wow, I didn't really change anything except I changed my lifestyle. I changed what I did. It became a very passionate hobby for me. It became something that I did often. I had a lot of fun doing it. I enjoyed doing it. I now own a crossbow and 3 compound bows. Got dozens of arrows and multiple targets in my backyard, and just going out there and shooting my bow and arrow. I would do that between sessions with clients because I still see people online. I would do that during like the lunch break of lectures I'm giving, which are now online often. And it just made me feel better and deal with the circumstances that were once causing me burnout. They now were not. So if you find yourself in a situation where it's like there's an environmental change, like make a change in your lifestyle. I had no idea that shooting a bow was going to make a difference. I literally did it because I remembered as a kid wanting a compound bow. Never got one, but I remember being desirous of having one. And then now I'm outside shooting this thing. My life changed. So just do something different and watch how it could impact your life and specifically your experiences with burnout. Recovery from burnout can be tricky. It can be hard. It can present challenges and obstacles. And I'm thinking about that now because as I've been upfront and transparent this whole week about my own struggles with burnout and what I dealt with as I was dealing with the exhaustion that comes from the work that I do and the way that I do it, like giving every single thing I have to this journey, I thought really hard about other than just identifying this burnout, what did I do to change my life? Like, what did I do to make a difference? And it really is a lifestyle change. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that, happens in a second. It's not something you can just do in a moment. Like, it requires commitment. Like, you have to really be like, I'm about to change my life. I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to deal with these circumstances anymore. And I don't want to be exhausted. I don't want to not have energy. I don't want to feel sick and tired all the time. Like, I've got to really make some changes. And I was thinking about what changes I made that like triggered the lifestyle change that caused me to not to feel burnout, that caused me not to feel worn down, that caused me not to feel run down. And there are 3 changes I want to talk about today. And I think if you understand these 3 changes, it'll improve your life. And to be honest with you, it'll improve your life certainly if you're dealing with symptoms of burnout. But it's not just exclusive to burnout. It'll improve your life regardless. So the first of the 3 changes I want to say is I started spending more time engaged with my friends and surrounded by those friends. Like, I started making sure that I would reach out to them more frequently with phone calls. Like, I would call Adam more frequently and just talk to him about life, talk to him about what was on my mind, share funny stories, ask about his life, want to hear what's going on in his life, want to hear his funny stories, and just started making my friendships a more consistent and a more profound part of my life and part of my like daily existence, if you will. The second thing that I did was I started having more fun. I think sometimes we treat fun like a reward or like something that I have to have a lot of time to do. But I started like, if I only got 20 minutes, I'm going to like watch a funny video. I'm going to watch 20 minutes of a funny movie, or I'm going to play video games for 20 minutes. But like, I started treating fun like it was something important that I need to make sure I paid attention to and something I needed to put into my routine. I wish I'd started that more frequently. Like, and here's an example. All those years when I had that therapy office, it would have been very easy for me. Like, I could have brought a television into the office and put it in this little side room that we used for group therapy, and then put a PlayStation or game console connected to that. And anytime a client like rescheduled or I had a free break, I could have played video games a little bit. Like, but at the time, like, my mind wasn't just thinking about that. But those are the sorts of things that, like, when you have them as part of your routine and part of your life, then burnout does not become as significant or does not really take hold of you. The last thing is probably the most significant, which is I changed my diet. The fuel you put in your body, the food you put in your body, it's either medicine or poison. And I know that sounds crazy, and I know that sounds cliche, and I know that lots of people say it, and lots of people, but like, the stuff you put in your body is either medicine or poison. And I was putting a lot of poison into my body. Fast food, soda, just things I wasn't even thinking about it. I was young and I was dumb. And when you feel, it's weird, when you feel tired, you're like, I got to go get a Coke to get some sugar and some caffeine into my body. But you do that long enough, and you if that takes hold of you for long enough, it becomes a profound problem. And now you have like crashes and you're exhausted and your body is not running like an optimum machine like you want it to be running. And when I changed my life from a dietary standpoint, I changed what I ate, I changed how I ate it, I changed when I ate it, meaning I don't eat like big heavy meals when I'm driving home from the office at 10 o'clock at night, or I don't drink soda or candy. You change everything. Your body will reward you by functioning better. Like, the machine will will do a better job of functioning like a machine. And that's a really important lesson to learn. And if you do these 3 things, your life will get better. Thanks for being here. If you wouldn't mind doing me a super huge favor, I would love it if you would share this podcast with at least one person in your life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. And also follow me on all of the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can search for my name, Elliott Connie, or at Elliott Speaks. That's my handle across all platforms. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.